In today's video, we're going to talk about harvesting your real estate profits from your real estate investments. So the first thing to keep in mind when it comes to real estate investing is that it is a tool to build wealth. It's not an end in itself. What I mean by that is, especially when you're getting started in real estate investing, it's very common to hear people say that they'll never want to sell a rental property and they always want to keep refinancing the equity from their properties to buy more. And while that is definitely true when you're in the early stages of your real estate investing, when you want to grow your portfolio, there is a time when it makes sense to start considering, liquidating some of your rental properties, if not all, based on where you're at in your life and based on your goals. So one of the strategies that you can use when it comes to harvesting some of your profits from your real estate investments is to pay off the mortgages. So let's look at a little case study here of Bob the investor. So Bob has done really well for himself with his real estate investments. He currently owns 4 rental properties, all of which are worth $500,000. He bought them for $300,000 each, and he currently has a mortgage of about $200,000 on each property. The only thing that Bob didn't do quite well was that, he purchased single family rental properties, which at the time, they were great investments, turnkey properties that he could easily rent out. He found great tenants for the time he's owned these properties. But the challenge now is that even though he's built up a considerable amount of equity, almost $300,000 of equity in each of these 4 homes, his cash flow is basically zero after paying the mortgage, property tax, insurance, and then, the occasional maintenance and repair and the different items that come up when owning real estate. In this example, we're going to assume that the cost of selling the property is about 5% with the real estate commissions, about $25,000, and of his $200,000 capital gain, he's going to pay about $40,000 in capital gains tax. So option A is that he sells 2 of the rental properties and he basically pays off the mortgages of the other 2 so that he owns only 2 properties now instead of 4, but they're fully paid for. So there's no mortgage payments every month. What that will do is, in this example, free up all the cash flow that he was paying towards the mortgage payment, and instead he now has that as pure cash flow coming in on a monthly basis. So in this case, let's assume it's about $1,500 per property, so about $3,000 a month. The hassle factor in this scenario is that it's reduced in half, right? Before it was 4 properties, now it's 2 properties. And typically in a scenario like this, I would typically recommend, let's look at the properties that are causing you the most trouble. Maybe it's the older properties, the ones with more maintenance or, things that come up on a regular basis. Because in every portfolio, there's always a few properties that cause more problems than the rest of them combined. So we target those properties to sell off, take the equity, pay off the ones that he'd want to keep, and he'd still have, a good chunk of equity even after the expenses of selling those 2 properties. He still has over $1 million in his equity. Now, option B in this scenario would be to sell all 4 of the rental properties and just take the proceeds of those funds and put it into a index fund or some passive investment where there's nothing involved from the work side of things, and he's just getting a return on his investment. So with an index fund, for example, you can choose something like a VGROW, right? The Vanguard Growth Asset Allocation ETF, where it's diversified across, multiple countries and multiple industries. And if you were to put in $940,000 into a investment like that, you could draw it down as he needed it. So if the typical rule of thumb is if you take 4% from your portfolio a year, it should last you indefinitely. That is true in some scenarios, and then there's a few scenarios where it doesn't quite work out, but as a rule of thumb, it's been a good one to follow. So if Bob thinks he can live off of $40,000 a year, this could be actually a great scenario. And you know what, if Bob's older, maybe he doesn't need the money to last forever. Maybe he needs it to last, 10, 20, 30 years. Then he can even take out a little bit more than that on a yearly basis. All of this comes down to one question. How much is enough? And this is honestly a question that I struggle with a lot as well. When it comes to growing your wealth, growing your real estate investments, we typically have a desire to create something, grow something, right? So this entire scenario boils down to one fundamental question. How much is enough? And it's a very tough question to answer, especially if you're ambitious, especially if you want to create some wealth, you want to accomplish something in your life. It's hard to actually say, I've made it. I've done what I need to do with my real estate investments, and let me put an end to it and focus on whatever else is really important in your life. This is why it's so important to know why you're getting into real estate investing in the first place. And does your actions align with your goals? So for example, if you want to travel the world, if you own 10 rental properties, and you may have a property manager, you may have people in place, but most of the portfolios that I've seen, especially when you have property management, it's tough to draw an income from these portfolios, right? It's tough to draw an income from real estate because most real estate investments, when they have mortgages, they don't tend to cash flow that much, but they're great at building equity. So it's great at building the wealth, but just not so great in terms of income. So if you're someone at a stage where you need income because you want to travel the world, you want to live in another country, right? You want to maybe support your parents or your kids or do whatever, owning real estate that's growing in equity may no longer be the right investment for you. I personally think real estate will always be a good investment in the long term, but there is a time when it's no longer the right investment for you. So this is where you have to know what really matters to you, and is it time to let go of some rental properties if it can help you achieve the things that really matter to you. Hope you found this helpful. If you're considering selling your rental property, check out my free guide I have in the link below of the top 5 mistakes you want to avoid when it comes to selling a rental property. I've seen a ton of mistakes being made, and I've sort of condensed it down to the top 5, and some of these are crazy. People have lost over $100,000 when it comes to selling their rental property. So definitely check it out if you are considering selling your rental property. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below, and until next time, all the best.